You are born in the year of our Lord 455, though you have no concept of such a thing. Your world is measured in seasons of mud and seasons of frozen earth. You are born in a hovel of wood and thatch, somewhere deep in the dripping forests east of the Rhine. Your first breath is a gasp of air thick with wood smoke and the smell of unwashed livestock. Your father is the chieftain, which sounds far grander than it is. He is a tired man with scar tissue around his eyes and dirt permanently lodged beneath his fingernails. His profession is managing violence. His fate, which he hands to you like a congenital disease, is to die from it. He takes a spear in the gut over a stolen herd of cattle and spends a week dying, loudly and without dignity. This is your inheritance. The path is not chosen. It is a social trap laid centuries before your birth. You are not a person. You are a replacement part for a failing piece of tribal machinery. There is a memory, a flicker from your earliest years, that seals this knowledge in your bones. You are watching your father hold court. Two furious, bearded men are screaming at each other over the ownership of a three-legged pig. Your father sits on a crude wooden stool, his face a mask of profound, soul-crushing boredom. He looks at you, his heir, and in his eyes you don't see paternal pride. You see only pity. You see the reflection of your own inescapable, tedious future. Your childhood ends at the age of 7. There is no ceremony, just a sudden absence of anything resembling joy. Your new home is the mud-caked yard outside the longhouse, a place of constant, low-level brutality. Your education begins. The curriculum is pain. Your uncle, a man with one eye and teeth like scattered tombstones, is your primary instructor. Lesson 1 is the river of resilience. He throws you into the bone-aching chill of the spring meltwater and waits for you to either crawl out or drown. You learn that survival is not a victory, merely a postponement of failure. Lesson 2 involves a wooden shield and a club. You are pitted against older, stronger boys in a daily ritual of humiliation and bruising. The goal is not to win. The goal is to learn how to get beaten without crying out, because silence is the only currency of respect. Lesson 3 is the art of the ambush. You spend days lying in freezing mud, learning the patience of a predator. Your reward a single, bloody piece of rabbit meat. There is a moment you fail. You are told to finish a wounded boar, its leg shattered in a trap. You hesitate, caught in a flicker of useless empathy for the squealing, terrified animal. The punishment is the flat of your uncle's hand against your skull. The impact rings in your ears for days. The thing you hesitate to kill will always kill you, he grunts. It is the most complete sentence you will ever hear him speak. This is not education. This is psychological demolition. Your individuality is a flaw to be hammered out. Your compassion is a weakness to be cauterized with casual cruelty. Your fear is a sin to be purged through exhaustion and pain. You are being scientifically stripped of your humanity. You are being molded into a tool, a simple, effective instrument for breaking things and settling disputes over pigs. They call this a privilege. There is a story, a gilded lie whispered by the bards and drunks around the fire. It speaks of noble chieftains, clad in shining mail, their halls ringing with laughter and song. They are heroes, demigods of strength and wisdom. This is the myth. Now, let's talk about your biological hell. Hygiene is not a concept that exists in your world. You, the leader of your people, are perpetually covered in a thin film of grease, grime, and sweat. The lice in your hair and beard are your most constant companions. Your longhouse, the great hall of legend, is a pit of filth. It stinks of sour beer, human effluvia, and the cloying odor of damp, rotting thatch. Vermin skitter in the shadows, bold and unafraid. Your diet is a monotonous insult to the digestive system. You eat greasy, half-cooked pork from pigs that wallow in their own filth right outside your door. You eat coarse, dark bread, so full of grit from the grinding stone that by age 30, your teeth will be worn down to painful stumps. You eat whatever root vegetables can be pulled from the stingy earth, often boiled into a gray, unidentifiable mush. Health is a fantasy. A simple cut from a butchering knife can fester into a swollen, purple limb that weeps pus. A fever is a potential death sentence. The chronic ache in your joints from the damp and the cold is as much a part of you as your own name. This is the vile reality. You are not a noble hero. You are a poorly maintained animal, living in a shit, presiding over other poorly maintained animals, all of you slowly succumbing to dirt and decay. This is your peak, the moment they will turn into a song. The year is 470. The breathtaking, your perpetually annoying neighbors, have decided your cattle look better in their fields. It's an old and boring story, but this time it will be your story. They think they've laid a clever trap in a forested valley, a place of shadows and easy slaughter. The stakes are simple and absolute. If you lose, your people will starve this winter. If you win, they will starve slightly less. This is what passes for high drama in your life. But you were raised by men like your uncle. You were taught to think like the predator, not the prey. You smell the trap on the wind, in the unnatural silence of the birds. Your strategy is not heroic. It is cruel and efficient. You send a small party forward as bait, a sacrifice you've already made peace with. As the breathtaking spring their ambush, you lead your main force in a crushing charge from their unprotected flank. The execution is a blur of mechanical violence. There is no artistry here. It is physics. The sharp edge of an axe meeting the soft resistance of a human neck. The crunch of a shield breaking a collarbone. The wet, percussive sound of your own spear finding a home in a man's belly. You see the breathtaking chieftain, Flavius, a man you once shared sour wine with at a truce negotiation. He is a giant, locked in combat with two of your men. You do not challenge him to a glorious duel. You circle behind him like a wolf, and while his attention is elsewhere, you bring the full force of your axe down upon the back of his helmet. There is a sickening dent, and he collapses like a felled tree. It is an ugly, pragmatic, and deeply effective act. The result is a total victory. The enemy is broken, their best warriors feeding the crows. You return not to cheers, but to a kind of grim, fearful respect. They give you a new name that day, the Fox. It is not a compliment. It is a statement of fact. You are not loved for your strength, you are feared for your cunning. But the legend is a cage. Your peak of craft is also the peak of your imprisonment. Let us examine the soul-crushing monotony of your daily existence as the fox. You wake before the sun, not to the sound of birds, but to the sound of someone already waiting outside your door with a grievance. Your day is an endless procession of petty squabbles. Gormir claims Hrothgar's dog impregnated his prize sow. Freya accuses Sigurd of stealing a clay pot. Two old men are locked in a generation-spanning dispute over a property line marked by a crooked tree. You are the sole arbiter of this human pettiness. You are less a king and more the chief administrator of a failing rural cooperative. Society needs you, but it also despises you. You see it in their eyes. When you walk through the village, conversations stop. Mothers pull their children closer. You are not their leader. You are their weapon, and they are terrified the weapon might go off by accident. There is a specific custom that reinforces your isolation. During feasts, you are served first and given the largest portion. This is not a sign of honor. It is a practical measure to see if the food is poisoned before anyone important eats it. You are the tribe's official taste tester. You are a disposable tool, a shield to be broken, a blade to be dulled in the service of the collective. And now, the final turn of the screw in your social cage. The vicious cycle begins anew. You have a son. He has your eyes. And you find yourself standing by a freezing river in the spring. You look at his small, shivering form, and with a heart that has been systematically turned to stone, you throw him in. You are now the grizzled veteran. You are the abusive tutor. You are forcing the curse onto the next generation, perpetuating the very system that dismantled your own soul. The unraveling does not come from a battlefield. It comes from the inside of a cup. The year is 482. The winter is long and vicious, trapping everyone in the smoky confines of the longhouse with their resentments and their boredom. The precipice is a night like any other. The air is thick with the fumes of too much cheap mead. The laughter is too loud, bordering on hysteria. You are drunk. Everyone is drunk. Gunnar, your blood brother, the man whose life you saved in the breathtaking valley, claps you on the back. He makes a clumsy, slurred joke about your wife's generous hips. It's a stupid, meaningless comment from a man drowning in fermented honey. But your paranoia, cultivated by years of being the fox, sees a threat. Your pride, the only thing your brutal education left you, sees a challenge. This is the fatal error. You do not shout, you do not argue. You draw your seeks, the short, heavy blade that never leaves your belt. You only mean to silence him, to put the fear of the chieftain back in his eyes. You mean to make a point. But you are drunk, and your movements are clumsy. He is drunk, and he stumbles forward as you push him away. There is no sound of clashing steel. Just a soft, wet puncture. You have misjudged the distance by inches. The point of your blade slides between his ribs with an almost imperceptible ease. This is the point of no return. The hall falls instantly silent. The only sound is a gasp from Gunnar, a look of comical surprise on his face. He looks down at the hilt of the knife protruding from his chest. He looks back up at you, his friend. And then he crumples to the floor. The blood begins to pool on the filthy rushes. In that moment, you are no longer the fox. You are just a butcher. You have not just killed your only friend. You have killed yourself. The haunting is immediate and relentless. That night, you do not sleep. You stare into the dying embers of the central fire, and you see Gunnar's face, his eyes wide with shocked betrayal. The psychological erosion has begun. The guilt is a physical presence, a cold stone in your gut. The whispers in the longhouse become a roar in your mind. Every shadow holds an assassin. Every averted glance is a judgment. Your authority, which was always just a carefully constructed illusion of violence, shatters. You seek an anesthetic for the agony in your own head. You find it at the bottom of a horn of mead. You start drinking when you wake and do not stop until you pass out. It is no longer for celebration or camaraderie. It is medicine. It is a tool to drown the ghost that now sits at your table. This new addiction accelerates your decay. Your hands begin to tremble. Your judgments, when you can be roused to make them, are incoherent and erratic. You strike a petitioner for speaking too loudly. You forget names, promises, and threats. Your wife, the subject of the fatal joke, no longer speaks to you. She moves her sleeping furs to her brother's hut at the far end of the village. It is a quiet public declaration. You are alone, trapped in the crumbling prison of your own consciousness, with nothing but a ghost and a horn of sour wine for company. Your end is pathetic. There are no sagas written about these final years. Your final setting is not the chieftain's seat in the great hall. It is a small, squalid hut, reeking of stale vomit and despair, where the village allows you to live out your disgrace. You are no longer a chieftain. You are a cautionary tale. Your death is not glorious. It is not even tragic. It is mundane. The inglorious cause is not a warrior's blade or a rival's poison. It is your own body's final, petty rebellion. A tooth, cracked years ago on gritty bread, has abscessed. The infection, unopposed by a system ravaged by alcohol, spreads to your jaw, then your blood. You die of a fever. Your final moments are not spent reflecting on your great victories. They are a delirious, sweat-soaked tumble into darkness. You are alone. You whimper Gunnar's name to the empty, smoky air. Then you are silent. A servant, sent with a bowl of thin gruel, finds you stiff and cold the next morning. You are buried without a marker. Your name is forgotten, your deeds misremembered as the work of some other, more competent leader. Your immediate legacy is oblivion, but then time performs its most perverse magic trick. 1400 years pass. A man in a dusty library, a nationalist poet with a political agenda, discovers a fragmented chronicle. It mentions a cunning fox who won a great victory in the breathtaking valley. This is all he needs. He resurrects you. But the you he creates is a stranger. This new you is tall, blond, and noble, a defender of his people against foreign encroachment. Your smoke-filled, stinking longhouse becomes a majestic golden hall. Your pragmatic slaughter of Flavis becomes a heroic, one-on-one duel in the sunlight. Your squalid life of filth and monotony is edited out. Your drunken, pathetic murder of your best friend is erased from the record. Your ignominious death from a toothache is replaced with a glorious last stand on a battlefield that never existed. They build a statue of this stranger and put your name on it. And so we arrive at the final, sobering truth. Your suffering was real, but it was also meaningless. History is not the story of what happened. It is the cleaned-up, romanticized, and useful story we tell ourselves long after the screams have faded and the bones have turned to dust. Your life was a biological hell. Your legacy is a comfortable lie. Let's revisit your peak. That victory was less a stroke of genius and more a calculated bet on the stupidity of your enemy. You knew Flavis. You knew he was arrogant, a man who believed his own bards. He thought himself a lion, so you treated him like one, leading him by the nose into a trap of his own making. The real cunning was not in the battle plan. It was in understanding that the most dangerous weapon on any battlefield is a man's ego. You didn't outfight him. You outthought him, and the distinction is crucial. Fighting is for brutes. Thinking is for survivors. And you were, above all else, a survivor. The aftermath was even more telling. You stood over Flavis's corpse, not with a sense of triumph, but with a cold, hollow feeling of administrative accomplishment. It was like fixing a leaky roof or putting down a rabid dog. It was necessary work. The cheers of your men were distant, alien sounds. They were celebrating a victory. You were simply calculating the new ratio of mouths to feed versus available resources. The legend they built began that day, but you were never a participant in it. You were merely its subject, a blank slate onto which they could project their need for a hero. You were the fox, yes, but a fox is not a lion. A fox is a scavenger, a creature of the shadows, celebrated only for its ability to cheat death for one more day. That is the truth of your great legacy. It was never about glory. It was about avoiding starvation. Let's also dig deeper into that social cage, the exquisite torture of being needed but not wanted. Consider the thing, the tribal assembly. It's presented as a form of primitive democracy. In reality, it was your personal purgatory. Imagine spending hours, days, squatting in a damp field, listening to every free man with a grievance drone on and on. Their voices a nasal litany of complaints about fences, insults, and imagined slights. You couldn't simply command them. You had to persuade, cajole, and bribe them with promises of future spoils. You had to remember the petty feuds stretching back generations. You had to know that Thorgil's grandfather was cheated by Einar's uncle, so you could never side with Einar on any issue, no matter how trivial, without Thorgil seeing it as a mortal insult. Your mind was a cluttered attic of other people's hatreds. It was a full-time job just to prevent your own people from killing each other over perceived disrespect. Your power was not absolute. It was conditional, fragile, and endlessly negotiated. You were less a ruler and more a perpetually exhausted hostage negotiator. And your own tribe was the collection of splintered, volatile factions you had to keep from blowing everything up. This wasn't leadership. It was a life sentence of managing dysfunctional personalities. And the unraveling. That fatal night with Gunnar. The joke itself was nothing. It was the laughter that followed it that broke you. In that moment, you didn't hear friends sharing a laugh. You heard a judgment. You heard the whispers you'd been imagining for years. The ones that said you were getting old, that the fox was losing his edge. Gunnar's stumble wasn't just a drunken accident. It was an indictment of your own diminished state. You, who had choreographed an entire battle, couldn't manage the space between two friends in a crowded hall. The Sikhs didn't just kill Gunnar. It punctured the fragile membrane of your own authority, the one you had so carefully constructed from fear and violence. The silence that followed was the sound of that authority bleeding out onto the floor along with your friend's life. In the days that followed, the internal erosion was absolute. Sleep offered no escape. The nightmares were always the same. You trying to pull the knife out, but your hands are slick with blood, and you can't get a grip. Gunnar doesn't accuse you. He just looks at you with that same dumb, bovine surprise. That was the worst part. The lack of accusation. It made the act entirely your own, a pointless, stupid tragedy of your own making. The mead was the only thing that could silence the replay in your head, but it was a clumsy tool. It silenced everything else too. Your reason, your judgment, your will to even wash yourself. You became the thing you had always despised, a liability, a broken tool waiting to be discarded. Your final end in that forgotten hut. The fever was almost a kindness. It blurred the edges of your miserable reality. In your delirium, you were young again, lying in the cold mud, learning the hard lessons of survival from your one-eyed uncle. You saw Gunnar not as a corpse, but as the young man who stood beside you, shield to shield, their breath misting in the cold air before the charge. Your last moments were not a descent into darkness, but a retreat into the past, the only place you could find a shred of meaning in a life defined by its absence. Your death was not an event, it was a quiet cessation of pain. A final, anticlimactic release from a lifetime of unchosen burdens. The village was probably relieved. The embarrassing, drunken ghost was finally gone. They could get on with the business of surviving without the constant reminder of your failure. This is the raw material from which myths are made. Not greatness, but the convenient, silent absence of the person who actually lived the life. History is a story told by the survivors, and you, my friend, were not one of them.